What's going on, traders, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's your boy, the Forex Amateur, and welcome back to another YouTube video. So, as you know, on a Monday morning, we like to get into my outlook of the markets. I need to get used to saying I, right? Because as I always say, I'm a one-man team, right? So, as you know, on a Monday morning, I like to go through what it is that I'm expecting from the market this week. What are my expectations? How I'm going to handle those expectations, as well as what is my plans going forward. So let's get straight into it. Before I do, let me just throw in my little disclaimer. Remember, I am not qualified nor licensed to offer financial, investment, or trading advice. Everything I speak about on these videos is purely my own opinion, right? I do not recommend any specific trade. I do not recommend any specific action. So ensure that if you do go into live trading, you do it with cash that you are willing to risk or lose, because it is very risky out here, right? Now, let's get straight into the video. As you know, the format for the video is very simple. We like to start with the dollar index, work our way into the currency or currencies that I am focused on for the week, and then we'll work our way over to the synthetic indices market. So let me just get my pen and let's just get straight into it. My goal is to make these videos much shorter, so I'm going to try and waste much less time, right? So I'm not trying not to digress too much from the topics at hand. So let's just talk about it real quick. Looking at the weekly chart, right? As you guys know, I am expecting upside on the dollar, but looking at it, we've got our range basically mapped out here. We've got our weekly high here. We've got our weekly low here. We're simply looking at the fact that this was the last high that broke market structure to the downside. So the market will be prone to come back into this area at some point, whether it breaks below this low and then comes back above that high, or whether it just goes straight above that high. At some point, it's going to go above that high. What we need to do is build a case as to why will this market from this point go above that high, and that is what we're going to break down here. So what we can see is we broke market structure to the downside here, creating a lower low, which would make this a lower high, right? So we would expect this to go lower and break below this low, which it obviously has failed to do, and we can see we're forming a swing low in here. So this is telling me that this market is most likely coming back into this high, and should it break above this, come back above this high, because this is my overall target for this move. I'd then be looking for something inside of here to take a trade back to the downside again from that point. So let's just go over, like I said, I don't want to predict too far into the future. I don't want to forecast too far into the future. So we're just going to focus on this week's candle. On the weekly chart, we will expect this week's candle to close bullish, right? So let's look at the daily chart and let's continue to build our case. So looking at the daily chart, what do we see over here? We've already got our 1, 2, 3 hit pattern to the downside. Generally, after this pattern, you would expect a market structure, you'd expect a market structure break to the upside. So that is what I'm currently expecting. As we can see, what we've got in here is coming off that weekly low. We failed to form a higher high. We've come back into here. So what I did say is I would take this entire level here as just a lower low, right? I won't consider each tap into that level. So looking at this, we can see that from here, what's actually happening, this was the last lower high that came down into this low, right? On a lower time frame, but on this higher time frame, this was the last lower high that came down into this low. So once the market breaks above this lower high here, we are then full on bullish on this market, and we should expect it to reach back into those areas on the weekly chart somewhere in here, and we should look for some downside from there. But just focusing on this, we can already see that coming into this lower low, we did push up, we pushed back into this area, we formed a higher low in this area, and we've now broken structure to the upside with this push. So simply focusing on that, this is our daily our range currently for this week, right? What we're looking at is just upside above that level. So what we're looking for now is after this break in market structure here, we can see we've already formed a higher low. After this higher low, the next thing we need to go up and do is form a higher high, right? So moving on from that, on the daily chart, let's move over to the 4-hour chart, and let's talk a little bit about the 4-hour chart. So we can see coming off that daily low, we already know that daily low here is already a higher low, and it comes on the back of a break in market structure. Remember, a valid higher low has broken market structure to the upside, right? And it's now come back and formed a higher low in here, and it's now broken market structure again to the upside in here. So we now got two successful breaks to the upside on here, here, I generally would look for some sort of a pattern here, and I would look for this market to continue to the upside. What we can see now is coming off this new higher low that was formed on the daily, right? We can't really mark it up because it doesn't look so clear, but as we see on here, we can see that we've had a break coming off that daily low. So we've now got a new higher low that has formed here, right? So now we would expect this to go to the upside. So what do we see in here now? We now see that coming off that low, we've got a break in market structure here to the upside. We've got this market coming back, forming a higher low, and we've got another break in market structure that happened last week. So now this market is either going to come back, right, to test this broken structure in here, come back into this area here, and then we'd be looking for continued buys to the upside, or we should not be surprised if this market does break to the upside from here. But for me to take a trade on here, I would be looking for something down into around these areas, and then I'd be looking to take this market back to the upside. Let's move over to the Euro USD, and let's talk about the weekly chart as well. As we know, we're bullish on dollar index, so we should be looking for downside on Euro USD. So coming on here, we can see this was the last lower high that broke to the downside in here. We could consider this entire area the lower high, right, or the higher high, sorry, because we've had this range break to the upside, forming this higher high, and we've got this market coming back, forming a higher low, which has now done what? It's now failed to break this market structure to the upside. So what I would be expecting in here is I would be expecting this to be some sort of a higher, a lower high that's going to form, and expect this to come back into this weekly low here, right? So simply looking at that, we know that we're expecting downside on the weekly chart. Looking at here for Euro USD though, what I do want to point out is there does seem to be a very high probability that once this market does come down into around these levels, there does seem to be a very high probability that it would be prone to want to come higher first, right? That it would be prone to want to come higher into here before it does come back down into here. So that's just something that I will be on the lookout as well. Okay, so just looking at the daily chart in here, I've mapped this low, this high here, and this low, right? Because we last broke this market structure to the downside. So that means this is the range. We would expect this to continue to the downside. So should we get a candle close below here and break this market structure, then I'll be looking for something into here to take it lower again, right? That's very simple. That's very straightforward. I don't need to even go lower than that. But let's look at the 4-hour chart. On the 4-hour chart, we can see coming off that daily high, we can see that break in market structure to the downside. We can see this lower high that has formed in here, and we can see that market already has broken market structure in here. So we're already looking for something back into around these areas here of this market, and then we'll look to take it back down again, right? Very simple, very straightforward. Let's move on to the synthetic indices market, and then we're done for this video. Let's start with volatility 100 on here. Look over on the weekly chart, and as you can see on here, I've mapped my range. We're in a bullish range at the moment. We've broken market structure to the upside. That's our weekly high, so we know that this is our current range. I should expect this market to come back down into here. I'm full on bearish on this market. However, we should expect it to give us some more pulls to the upside, before it comes back down into here. But overall, looking at this, we're looking at downside. Looking at the daily chart, coming off that weekly high, we can see a break in market structure here to the downside, giving us a what? A lower low on the daily. So we should expect this market to either pull back and give us a lower high, right? But what I'm actually expecting in this market is I'm expecting this market to come back here, and this is where I would consider this the lower low, at this pivot point. From that point, I'll expect it to come back up, maybe come back down, and then look for upside, maybe back into around these highs. But like I said, that's much further into the future. Looking for just this week, I'll be looking for the market to come back into here. Should it come back into here, or test some of these levels in here, then I'll be looking for some upside back into this range here that just broken structure, and then I'll be looking for it coming back into this weekly low and perhaps lower than this weekly low. Let's move over. I'm not sure if I've analyzed anything. Oh yeah, I have. On the 4-hour chart, we can see that we've already got a break in market structure here to the downside. We've already broken below that daily low. So should we see anything in happening inside of this range at the moment, we should be looking to see that downside into that pivot point if we can get an opportunity. We can see after this break in market structure, we've got this pullback and we've now got the strong bearish push to the downside, even giving us a bearish engulfing candle as well. So I should be expecting some sort of a retest into around, say, around this area here, and then look for this market to continue back down into around that area there. So moving on from that, let's move over to volatility 10, which is the king of my watch list right now. I've had some amazing trades on this chart over the past 3 weeks, and that is amazing. This is some of the best trades that I've taken on synthetic indices so far, which I have been updating since I took the entries on the 1 minute chart, and all the other entries that I've been taking on the 30-minute chart and stuff like that. I've been updating on social media as well. So if you do follow me, then you do know what we've been doing on this chart for the past couple of weeks. Looking at this, as I've been saying, breaking market structure to the upside in here, showing us that we have momentum to the upside. So now we'll be looking for something down into this weekly low, something into here, and then we'll be looking to take that upside. Very simply, I am currently short-term bearish on volatility 10. Looking at the daily chart in here, we can see coming off that weekly high, we can see that we had a push down into here. I don't generally take this level, right, because it's too close together, but we're just looking at this range here because this was the range that broke this market structure to the downside. So I am looking for something maybe coming back into around these areas here, not actually so deep, coming back into around above this high here, and then I'll be looking for more downside. And as you can see, this is my take profit line that I've got here, right? So I'll be looking for something from here down into there, right? Very simple, very straightforward. This should actually cover this week's movement. Not really much we can speak about on the 4-hour chart in here. As you can see, this market is giving us some strong last pushes to the downside in here. We've got some strong structure breaks to the downside in here, and that tells me that all these highs in here are now targets for when this market comes back to the upside into around that area in there, right? But as I said, I'll be looking for something in there, back down, and then I'll be looking for something to the upside based on that daily chart. Let's move over to volatility 75, and then we're done for this video. Moving on with volatility 75, as you can see on here, that's our last break to the upside, our weekly range with this market structure break. We found this lovely demand zone in here, which has actually played its part really well, because like I said, when I look at a demand zone, I generally just look at this market coming back into around the previous high. I don't look to take it above the previous high, right? Because I don't believe in supply and demand zones to that extent, but they do give you some sort of a movement and some sort of a reaction in there. It's just that you have to be a bit more precise with your targeting, and that is why I prefer to get out before the previous high in the case of a demand zone, or before the previous low in the case of a supply zone. So looking at that, we know we're in a bullish range coming off this low in here. We do see that this was the last low that broke market structure to the upside. We even broke this long-term market structure from here to the upside. So we do know that this market is most likely going to do what? It's going to look to come back into these levels in here, and then it's going to look for something back to the upside, maybe give us some sort of a 3-hit pattern type of thing in here, and then maybe break out to the upside type of shit in there. Right now, this chart is something that I'm not really focused on at the moment, but that is what I would be looking at on here. So looking at coming off that daily low, we can see we formed this higher low, we failed to create a higher high, and we've now got a break in market structure to the downside. So if we had to map a range in here, that would be our high, and then we'd wait for a swing low to be formed in here. This should be the market now turning above, or perhaps it would want to come back below here, and then just go to the upside in and around somewhere around this area in, wow, somewhere around this area in here is where I'd be looking for more maybe pullbacks to the downside or something like that, because we are currently in a bullish range, and we'll just look to see where that swing low is formed. So if we take any sells in here, what are we doing? We're simply targeting wherever that swing low is formed, right? So that's it from my side. Not really much more I need to speak about on these charts. My breakdown these weeks going forward is actually going to be much more simpler. As you can see, I'm going to try to put in very little information, but try to give you as precise targeting as possible so that you could also use it for your demo trading as well. So remember, anything that you pick up, whether it's on my videos, whether it's on my trading or whatever it is, be sure to go back and test it so you have a thorough understanding on how it works. Looking at how it works when I use it is not going to give you the understanding and the presence of mind for you to be able to actively navigate the markets using the same systems, even if it does work, right? So be sure to do so. Now, until next time, it has been a pleasure as always to share with you guys, and I am wishing you a blessed and a profitable trading week. And I will be catching up with you again on Wednesday morning to do the midweek update in terms of all the charts that we have covered today. Be sure to also check out in the link below the link to the mentorship application that will be open throughout the month of June. So be sure to hit that link and be sure to try and apply for the mentorship application so that you could get into that mentorship if it is something you are interested. Remember, if you're not going to be serious about it, do not apply, because this takes a lot of my time. It takes a lot of my effort as well. So if you're not going to be willing to make some sacrifices on your side, if you're not going to be willing to take it seriously, please do not apply, because it is not for you. It's only for those that want to have a deeper understanding of trading, that want to have a deeper understanding of price action and how to navigate the markets. I'm not going to give you a trading strategy, but you will have a thorough understanding of my strategy and how my strategy works, and also a thorough understanding of how price action works. Also, be sure to be on the lookout for the free price action course as well, which I will be uploading soon. I'm just messing around with a few things, but I will be uploading that soon. So be sure to take advantage of that as well. So until next time, take care, and I'll catch up with you guys again later on.